It is the year 1497, and the aroma of spices fills the air, a tantalizing hint of exotic lands carried on the zephyrs of the Indian Ocean. Standing at the prow of the ship, his gaze unwavering, stands Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese explorer on the verge of a historic milestone. His journey, fraught with challenges and triumphs, has taken him across uncharted waters, driven by the ambition of exploring new trade routes to the east. Aboard his vessel, an ensemble cast of sailors, merchants, and adventurers have weathered countless storms, endured scorching heat, and battled scurvy, all in the pursuit of riches and glory. Now, as they approach the bustling port of Calicut in India, anticipation hangs heavy in the air. For many, this marks the culmination of months at sea, a testament to human courage and the unquenchable thirst for discovery. But for others, it's just another stop on an ongoing journey, a familiar routine in a life defined by the relentless rhythm of the waves. He takes a deep breath, savoring the moment, knowing that he stands on the threshold of something extraordinary. As we embark on a journey back in time to the era of medieval maritime adventures, we'll explore the captivating tales of these brave souls who dared to conquer the unforgiving seas and the impact their journeys had on shaping our world. Our story unfolds aboard one of the most common vessels of the age, a humble carrick, a sturdy workhorse of the oceans. These ships, typically 3 to 4 stories tall, dominated the seas from the 13th to the 17th century. Powered by the wind, propelled by square-rigged sails, they were designed to carry precious cargo, including sought-after spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, which had become coveted commodities in European markets. The carrick was more than just a vessel. It was a microcosm of medieval society, a melting pot of cultures and classes. On its decks and below, a multitude of characters came together, united by the common purpose of navigating the treacherous waters and uncharted territories. The hierarchy was strict. At the top stood the wealthy merchants, the patrons who bankrolled these expeditions in the hopes of amassing fortunes. Below them were the captains, men of experience and skill, entrusted with the responsibility of navigating the ship and its crew safely to their destinations. Then came the sailors, the backbone of the operation. Men from various walks of life who had been drawn to the promise of adventure and perhaps a chance at a better life. Their work was arduous, their conditions cramped and unsanitary, their lives hanging in the balance with every wave that crashed against the hull. In the dimly lit depths of the ship's hold, hidden from the elements and the prying eyes of fellow crew members, lay the secret to the ship's success, its cargo. Here, amidst the dim oil lamp lighting, the air thick with the mingled scents of spices, leather, and salt, sat the scribes, recording the transactions that would shape the fortunes of many. They were the silent architects of global trade, their quill pens scratching across parchment, documenting the exchange of goods and the ebb and flow of wealth. As the scribe recorded each transaction, he was not merely making entries on a page. He was weaving a narrative of global commerce, a story of far-flung empires and the intrepid traders who dared to connect them. With each stroke of his pen, he immortalized the names of merchants and captains, the value of precious commodities, and the perilous journeys undertaken to acquire them. The pages of these ledgers became a testament to the risks, rewards, and complexities of a world increasingly bound by trade. As night descends and the sounds of the bustling port fade into the darkness, our attention shifts to the heart of the ship's operations, the bustling marketplace. Here, amidst the labyrinthine network of masts and rigging, the air alive with the chatter of merchants and the murmur of bartering sailors, the deals that shaped the fate of nations were struck. It was here, in this floating hub of activity, that fortunes were made and lost, alliances forged, and rivalries ignited. Amidst the cacophony of the marketplace, there existed a world of hushed whispers and clandestine exchanges. Smugglers moved with practiced ease, their eyes constantly scanning for danger, slipping forbidden goods into the hands of eager buyers. They dealt in rare artifacts, stolen treasures, and coveted luxuries, all obtained through daring raids or covert missions. Meanwhile, pirates lurked in the shadows, their presence a constant threat to the safety of both ships and crews. With cutlasses in hand and cunning in their hearts, they waited for the opportune moment to strike, eager to plunder the riches that lay within the holds of merchant vessels. In this perilous environment, survival depended on vigilance, quick thinking, and an understanding of the unspoken rules that governed the shadowy underbelly of the maritime world. The safety of the ship and its inhabitants rested on the shoulders of the ship's officers, men who had honed their skills through years at sea. Leading them was the captain, the ultimate authority on board. His decisions determined the ship's course, its speed, and its fate. Below him, the navigator, armed with charts and astrolabe, charted their path, guiding them through treacherous waters and uncharted territories. The boatswain, a master of ropes and rigging, ensured the ship's sails and masts were shipshape, ready to catch the winds that would propel them forward. And then there was the surgeon, a figure whose role transcended medicine. In a time when the line between life and death was often blurred, he was a healer, a caretaker, and sometimes the bearer of grim tidings. Together, they formed the backbone of the ship's operations, their expertise and leadership vital to the success of the voyage. As we navigate the intricate world of medieval maritime adventures, we encounter a diverse array of personalities, each playing a crucial role in the grand tapestry of seafaring life. But amidst the hustle and bustle of the marketplace and the salty air of the open seas, the lives of these adventurers were often on the line, threatened by the perils that lurked both on land and at sea. To truly understand their world, we must venture into the shadows, where danger lurked around every corner. The year is 1511, when a violent storm suddenly erupts, unleashing its fury upon the mighty flagship of the Portuguese, the Santiago. As waves the size of mountains crash over the deck, tearing sails and shattering masts, all hands scramble to save the ship and its precious cargo. Amidst the chaos, the captain finds himself at the helm of a desperate fight for survival. Every gust of wind, every crack of thunder, and every crashing wave brings the Santiago closer to ruin. He barks orders, his voice hoarse with urgency, directing his crew to batten down the hatches, haul in the sails, and brace themselves against the relentless onslaught of the elements. The men respond with a mixture of awe and determination, their years of training and experience kicking in as they work together to save the ship. But even as they fight valiantly against the raging tempest, the reality of their fate hangs precariously in the balance. For this is no ordinary storm. It is the wrath of the sea itself, testing their courage, their skills, and their very survival. As the storm rages on, the fate of the Santiago and its crew remains uncertain. Will they be able to withstand the fury of the elements and emerge victorious, or will they succumb to the unforgiving power of nature and be lost to the turbulent depths? In the depths of the ocean, far from the bustling ports and sun-drenched decks of trading ships, lies a world of mystery and intrigue. Here, silent sentinels slumber, their secrets hidden beneath the waves. These are the shipwrecks, frozen moments in time, remnants of vessels that once sailed the seas, each bearing witness to a unique chapter in maritime history. The first shipwreck we encounter is the Mary Rose, a Tudor warship that sank in 1545 during a battle with French forces off the coast of Portsmouth, England. As we dive into its depths, we find ourselves transported to a time of fierce naval battles and the valiant efforts of the men who fought on her decks. Among the treasures recovered from the Mary Rose is a remarkable collection of personal belongings, offering a poignant glimpse into the lives of those who sailed her. We see everyday items like shoes, combs, and tankards, each telling a silent story of the individuals who once called this warship home. These objects, once handled with care, now rest in the cold embrace of the seabed, serving as tangible reminders of the human stories that unfolded aboard the ship. But our underwater journey does not end with the Mary Rose. We venture further, discovering the remnants of the Vasa, a magnificent Swedish warship that sank in 1628 during its ceremonial launch. Exploring the Vasa, we marvel at the intricate craftsmanship of its carvings and the grandeur that once adorned its decks. The ship's ornate gun carriages, beautifully carved with mythological creatures and scenes from classical mythology, speak to the artistic talent and cultural aspirations of the time. As we swim through the shattered remains of the Vasa, we cannot help but be awestruck by the sheer scale and opulence of this ill-fated vessel. But it is in the details that the true magic lies. Tucked away in the nooks and crannies of these shipwrecks are small treasures that reveal the intimate stories of those who lived and died at sea. On the decks of the Mary Rose, we might come across a child's toy, a a simple reminder of the young lives that were part of the ship's crew. While on the Vasa, we could stumble upon a cook's personal belongings, hinting at the culinary adventures that once took place in the ship's galley. It is in these delicate, seemingly insignificant items that the human element shines through, connecting us to the past and allowing us to empathize with the experiences of those long gone. Your journey through time aboard medieval ships has come to an end, leaving you with echoes of salty winds and the haunting cries of gulls. The camaraderie of sailors, the trials of long voyages, and the pulse of life on deck have left an indelible mark. But now you must return to the present, blinking at the sunlight after a long journey through time. As you do, take a moment to reflect on the experience. Let the lessons learned and stories heard resonate within you. Perhaps the resilience of the sailors, the thrill of discovery, or the echo of laughter in the bustling marketplace will stay with you long after the bell tolls, marking the end of this immersive adventure. Your voyage through time may have ended, but the spirit of the sea and the stories of those who sailed it live on in the chambers of your memory. From the quiet hardships of ordinary sailors, let us now follow the course of one of the most significant navigators of the late medieval and early modern world, Vasco da Gama. His voyages stretched beyond familiar waters, charting paths that reshaped trade and connected distant continents. Yet even his journeys were shadowed by the same discomforts, dangers, and uncertainties we have already felt aboard a ship. Vasco da Gama was born in Portugal around the year 1460 in a society eager to explore. By this time, European kingdoms were pressing outward along the seas, seeking new trade routes, new sources of wealth, and new connections to distant lands. For centuries, spices from the east, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, had been carried by caravan and ship across long winding routes that passed through many hands. Each hand took its share. Each exchange added to the cost. Portugal dreamed of a direct sea route to India, bypassing these middlemen. In 1497, da Gama was chosen to attempt this voyage. He and his crew set out with 4 ships, leaving the mouth of the Tagus River and slipping into the open Atlantic. Imagine those decks crowded with sailors, provisions, and hopes that the sea itself might open a new path. The voyage was not only a journey of trade, but a leap into the unknown. The fleet sailed down the coast of Africa, stopping at harbors where they could resupply with food and water. They crossed treacherous waters near the Cape of Good Hope, where violent storms threatened to tear ships apart. For days, the men clung to ropes and prayed as the vessels pitched and rolled in the roaring surf. When the winds calmed, the voyage pressed onward, the horizon stretching always ahead. At last, after months of travel, they reached the Indian Ocean, and by the spring of 1498, they anchored near the coast of Calicut in India. The sight of bustling markets, filled with goods from across Asia, must have seemed like the fulfillment of a dream. Yet the reception was not as welcoming as they had hoped. Local rulers and merchants, already part of a thriving trade network, viewed these strangers with suspicion. Even so, da Gama managed to secure small amounts of spices before returning home. The voyage was long and brutal. Scurvy ravaged the crew, and many never saw Portugal again. Of the original company, only a fraction survived the return. But when Vasco da Gama entered Lisbon's harbor in 1499, his ships carried enough proof, pepper, cinnamon, and other precious goods, to show that a sea route to India was indeed possible. This journey, though filled with hardship, changed the course of history. It opened the way for Portugal to build a powerful trading empire, linking Europe with Asia by sea. Vasco da Gama would sail again, later leading more expeditions and cementing his reputation. His name became tied to the age of exploration, a symbol of endurance and ambition across oceans. Yet for the sailors who accompanied him, the glory was distant. For them, the voyage meant months of salted rations, storms, sickness, and the constant threat of death at sea. The spices they carried home enriched kings and merchants, but the men themselves returned worn, scarred, or sometimes not at all. When we think of Vasco da Gama now, imagine both perspectives. The admiral, charting routes that shaped empires, and the ordinary sailor gripping a rope in the salt spray, stomach empty, body weakened by scurvy. Together they made the voyage, and together they remind us that exploration was not only discovery, but endurance. As the sails filled with wind and Lisbon came once more into sight, the weary sailors must have felt both relief and disbelief that the endless ocean had at last released them. From the crowded decks of Vasco da Gama's ships, let us sink now into quieter places, the remains of vessels that never returned. Beneath the surface of seas and rivers lie the silent testimonies of sailors whose journeys ended abruptly. Shipwrecks are more than tragedies. They are time capsules, preserving fragments of life at sea long after voices and sails have faded. Imagine diving slowly into clear water, the sunlight filtering down in pale beams. On the seabed, a shape emerges. Timbers darkened by centuries, broken ribs of a ship that once bore men across great distances. Around it lie scattered relics, pottery, tools, perhaps even coins, all resting quietly in the sand, untouched by human hands, until discovered centuries later. One such find was the wreck of the Belitung ship, discovered off the coast of Indonesia. Though not medieval European, it belonged to the 9th century and revealed a cargo of Tang Dynasty ceramics, a reminder of how global trade routes reached far earlier than we often imagine. For medieval sailors, such wrecks were constant reminders that the sea was not always generous. Closer to Europe, archaeologists have uncovered medieval cogs, sturdy, single-masted ships used widely for trade in the North and Baltic seas. In riverbeds and coastal shallows, their remnants have been pulled from the mud. Sometimes barrels still hold traces of the goods they once carried: salted fish, wool, wine, or grain. These finds offer us glimpses not only of cargo but of daily life, the kinds of objects ordinary sailors touched, carried, and relied upon. Perhaps the most famous shipwreck story tied to exploration is the Esmeralda, part of Vasco da Gama's fleet. Lost off the coast of Oman in 1503, it lay hidden until archaeologists uncovered it in the 2010s. Among the remains were navigational instruments, weaponry, and even coins stamped with the Portuguese crown. To touch these objects now is to hold a fragment of lives once lived upon the waves. Each shipwreck tells two stories, one of the voyage cut short, and one of survival, preserved through time. Some reveal the dangers sailors feared most: storms tearing sails to ribbons, rocks splintering hulls, fires that consumed wooden decks. Others speak of battles at sea, when cannon fire or boarding parties brought chaos to the waves. Yet beneath the water, all that remains is stillness. The noise and terror are gone. What is left is only quiet testimony. Imagine standing in a museum, gazing at a fragment of carved wood, its edges worn smooth by the ocean. Perhaps you see a clay jug, once filled with wine, or a shoe, the leather stiff with age. These objects, though simple, connect us across time. They remind us that the sailors who wore, used, and touched them were not so different from ourselves. Men with calloused hands, weary bodies, and hopes carried across the horizon. Shipwreck archaeology brings us closer to the human side of history. It takes what was lost and restores it to memory, offering us glimpses of voyages that never returned to port. In their silence, these wrecks remind us of the fragility of life at sea, the constant uncertainty that hung over every voyage. As you picture these remains, imagine the slow rocking of the waves above, the distant echo of gulls, and the quiet rest of ships that will never sail again. They lie beneath the surface, forgotten by the living, yet still carrying stories that drift gently into our present. While most sailors endured cramped quarters, salted rations, and sickness, there were others aboard ships whose lives followed a different rhythm. The captains and wealthy merchants lived not in hardship, but in relative comfort, and their fates were often tied to the success or failure of voyages. Imagine the captain's cabin, still modest by modern standards, yet far more spacious than the sailors' hammocks below deck. A wooden desk might hold maps, compasses, and ledgers. The air carried the faint scent of wax from a burning candle, the walls decorated with a few simple carvings. Here decisions were made, courses charted, and records kept. While sailors struggled with ropes and sails, the captain's burden was of responsibility. For lives, for cargo, and for the reputation that followed each voyage. Merchants, too, often traveled on board, guarding their investments. For them, the sea was not simply a workplace, but a path to profit. Spices, silks, wool, and wine were loaded in barrels and sacks, each one representing risk and reward. A storm could destroy fortunes in a single night. A safe return could enrich a family for generations. In ports like Venice, Genoa, Lisbon, and Bruges, Wealthy merchants built lives far removed from those of the sailors who carried their goods. Their homes were adorned with tapestries, their tables filled with imported delicacies. Their voices carried weight in civic councils. For them, the sea was not endured directly, but was experienced through the hands and hardships of others. Yet even captains and merchants were not immune to the sea's power. Authority did not shield them from storms, nor wealth from the spread of disease on board. Many died alongside their crews, buried together in the same restless waters. Still, the contrast remained clear. Where ordinary sailors counted each meal and ration, captains dined from private stores. Where sailors slept in crowded holds, merchants rested in cabins away from the noise of labor. This division reminds us that even on a single ship, society was layered. The sea carried them all, but not equally. Conclusion. And now, our voyage through the world of medieval sailors comes to an end. We began in the dim, crowded spaces of a ship, where sailors endured long journeys on salted rations, stale water, and the constant threat of sickness. We followed Vasco da Gama across uncharted seas, his voyages reshaping the map of the known world, while sailors bore the silent cost. We drifted downward into the stillness of shipwrecks, their remains preserved as quiet memorials to lives lost. And finally, we stepped into the cabins of captains and merchants, where wealth and authority offered comforts that ordinary sailors could scarcely imagine. Through it all, one theme endures: the sea was both pathway and prison. It offered opportunity and connection, but demanded endless endurance from those who lived upon it. The sailor's life was rarely one of glory. Instead, it was marked by hunger, monotony, storms, and the steady rhythm of work that never truly ended. Now, as you lie in comfort, you may reflect on the contrast. You are not rocked by waves in the dark hold of a ship, nor awakened by the cry of a captain demanding sail be trimmed. You are not bound to salted rations or stale water. You are safe, on land, in a place of stillness. Take a slow breath, as though inhaling the quiet of a calm sea. Imagine the ship's timbers settling into silence, the stars bright above an endless horizon, the ocean rocking gently beneath. Let the hardships of that world drift away, leaving only the rhythm of water, steady and soothing. The sailors are gone, their voices carried into the distance by waves. What remains for you is calm, safety, and rest. Good night.